Okay, everyone, welcome to today's session, which is hosted to you by the EU SME Center in collaboration with one of the implementing partners of the Danish Chamber of Commerce. It is now 4 o'clock in the afternoon here in Beijing, where we are coming to you from. And to you watching online, most of you back in Europe, I'll say that today's activity will be simultaneously here in Beijing and also broadcasted back to you in Europe or wherever you're tuning in from as well. The topic will be maneuvering Chinese social media. We'll be tuning in on some of the differences and some of the best practices as we are joined here today by the speaker, Paul McNeill, who's managing partner at Resonance here in China. And has a long history of working with media and trends on the media in China for about 20 years at least. So before I hand over the microphone to Paul in today's presentation, I do want to give you all an introduction to what the EU SME Center is. And the EU SME Center is hosting a lot of events, such as the one today. All these events are completely free of charge. The only thing that we are hoping for in return is that you kindly, after today's event is over, that you either scan the QR code on the screen that's here now. It will come back later in the end of the presentation. That's for you watching online. And for those of you who are here today on site, we also have printed out this feedback survey, which can help us to hopefully in the future make our events even better for everyone. I should also say that at the end of today's presentation, there will be a Q&A session with today's speaker. So should you, both here in the audience and also for you online, should you have any questions that you would like to ask the speaker for today's presentation, then just use the Q&A function in the bottom of this Zoom platform. And then I'll be sure to get through those questions together with the speaker at the end of today's presentation. The same, of course, goes for you watching online, watching offline. You don't have to click any buttons, but just raise your hand at the end of the Q&A session once we get to that. So, the EU SME Center. What is the EU SME Center? The EU SME Center is a project that's funded by the EU Commission with the purpose of assisting European small and medium-sized enterprises getting access into the Chinese market. The project was established during the first time for around 10 years ago in phase 1, but now we are having phase 3. Under phase 3, which started October 2020 and running until March, and including March 2022, we in the Danish Chamber of Commerce are one of the 5 implementing partners together with EUROCHAMBRES, together with the European Chamber of Commerce, the China Britain Business Council, and also the what's the last one? The last one is the Italian Chamber of Commerce, of course. So besides that, the EU SME Center has a maximum of 4 different things that it seeks to do. The main thing that it seeks to do is act as a knowledge center to assist European SMEs getting access into China. That means that right now there is around 200 comprehensive market reports, guidelines, and case studies that are accessible freely through the EUSME website. There's also, the EUSME Center also acts as an advice center, giving practical and confidential advice on business development in China. The third of the 4 main aspects of the EUSME Center is to act as a training center. That comes to fruition through activities and sessions such as the one we're having today, where we're zooming in on specific topics to that way guide and give advice to European small and medium-sized enterprises on how to gain access to the Chinese market. Now, the 4th and last one of the 4 main pillars of the EUSME Center is that it also acts as an advocacy platform for the European small and medium-sized enterprises in China. Now, there's one extra thing that was released just a little while ago, and that is this self-assessment tool that the EUSME Center has published. And this is a tool which you can find on the EUSME Center website. It allows you to use the tool and to that way know at which stage your company is in the process of getting ready to the Chinese market. So that tool is free and available, and we very much recommend you to take a look at it by your convenience. Now, so that means if you have any questions for the EU SME Center, there are many ways that you can ask them. One of the main ways that we would like to recommend is to go into our website and click the Ask the Expert function. Ask the Expert function is free to use and is available at all times, and it can cover just about anything that you may have in mind as a small and medium-sized European company as to how to enter the Chinese market. It could be related to today's topic, but it could also be related to something completely different. Here is an outline on some of the activities. I will not go too much into the next coming of activities that is hosted by the EU SME Center, but it just goes to show that there's a lot of other activities besides the one we're having today, and all of them are free to participate in, so you're most welcome to join. I'd just like to once again remind that throughout today's presentation, once we get to the speaker, then it is possible to submit your questions through the Q&A function down at the bottom of the Zoom platform. That way, we will be sure to ask the questions to today's presenter at the end of the presentation. Now, that covers the part of the EU SME Center. But the EU SME Center is, as I told in the beginning, comprised of 5 implementing partners. I am representing the Danish Chamber of Commerce here in China, and we are one of the 5 implementing partners. So I'd just like to give 1 or 2 brief moments to introduce our organization and what we're doing in China. Our organization is the main platform for Danish business companies to help each other in China. We have been established for 21 years by now, and we have offices in North China, in East China, and in South China. And through our 3 offices, we cover a company segment of just about 170 companies in total, all Danish or related to Danish businesses. So much like the EU SME Center, we are also having a lot of activities with the purpose of assisting not only small and medium-sized enterprises, but also big enterprises as well, mainly Danish companies or companies who are interested in the Danish-Chinese business relationship. Now, I also just want to say here in one moment that we have just released our first version of the DBOC, the Danish Business Outlook on China Index Survey. This survey provides an overview, just a brief temperature check to give an indication of how Danish companies are perceiving their operations in China based on a quarter-to-quarter basis. So now you can see the results from the first survey, which we have just published, is 55.9. Anything over 50 indicates a positive indication of doing business in China for Danish companies. This survey is available on our website as well, so you're most welcome to check further details there. Should you be interested in following more of our activities besides the activities that we have together with the EU SME Center, then you're most welcome to scan either a QR code to follow us on WeChat, or check our LinkedIn page as well, or our website. Now, with all of that out of the way, I will not be saying too much more, other than I would like to hand the word over to today's presenter, which is Paul McNeill, who is the managing partner of Resonance China. Paul will be presenting under the topic of maneuvering the Chinese social media platforms and some of the differences and best practices of using them for European small and medium-sized enterprises coming into the Chinese market. So please welcome Paul here to the stage. Thank you, Paul.
Okay, thank you, Nikolai. Hope you can hear me all okay at the back up there. A couple of slides. First of all, who we are and what we do. Resonance has been based in China since 2008. We were founded here. Offices in Beijing and Shanghai. We've got 70 people across these 2 offices, and we work with a lot of international lifestyle brands. We do a broad range, everything from analysis, consulting, data analysis, digital and social, working across many different digital platforms in China. As they have evolved, we started even before Weibo was launched. We started back in the days with Renren and Kaixin and things like that, also e-commerce and social CRM and CRM is very important. I'll talk about that in a moment and why that is important. And then online and offline, we work across many different platforms. I said we work with a lot of lifestyle brands, a lot of fashion brands, a lot of travel companies, and then the odd beer brand thrown in there as well. So without further ado, key numbers. I'm fully aware that there's a broad array of knowledge online and here in the audience, so please forgive me if some things are too simple. Also forgive me if some things are a little too complex, but we have to find a happy middle ground here. So I'll start with some key numbers first of all. China, as we know, is very, very digitally focused, and that has come from one main thing. That is the proliferation of smartphones in China. That is the one thing here. Even as I'm looking at the audience here, I'm sure you sit in your office, be it in Europe or here in China, playing with your phones. So probably half of you are doing that right now, answering emails. They are everywhere in China, and I think penetration is over 100% because most people have more than one mobile phone. Because of that, there was a bit of a, probably the best word is a technology leap. A lot of people, especially in the more rural areas of China, their first access of the internet wasn't through a PC or a laptop, it was actually through their smartphone. So it's very smartphone centric. So anytime you start with a digital strategy of any sorts, it's got to start from the mobile phone upwards. So that's where you start, be it a website, be it an app, be it whatever, you've got to think about it in that small screen and how your content should be displayed. Okay, so that's the first point of thinking. So mobile phones are the way to go here. One of the other things that has jumped out is the fact that the lockdown that we've had in China was earlier than most places. March last year saw a huge surge in the internet penetration. And if you look at the lead in the rural areas, let's see, let's see, I'll get this one here. The second line, you see here a huge jump from 46 to 55% penetration. That means we still have a lot of opportunity for growth, but it shows you how much there was a jump just over a year ago during the COVID period. So both rural areas and urban areas have increased, but especially the rural areas have become even more important. And one of the challenges we'll talk about later, people will see, is fueled in many cases by more rural areas. Another one is the certain categories in China that are very strong. Oops. Payment and shopping, extremely high here, these two, and also videos and short videos, and live streaming, which I'll go into a bit more. Of the last 2, 3, 4 years, short video formats, I think many of you know TikTok, started here in China under Douyin, but there's also some other platforms that are extremely important. But also things like on WeChat and Weibo, video content is extremely important. And especially as you see how a lot of your content, social media content, is consumed on the go, videos are a great way of actually getting that message across. So with the proliferation of videos and with that, live streaming, we'll talk about live streaming, what that is later, and why that's such a great format for selling your goods to the people of China. A few years ago, we talked about the DAX. That was Baidu. That was Tencent. We talked about Alibaba. But nowadays, it has been for the last couple of years just sort of an Alibaba and Tencent duopoly. But what's happened, I think, in the last couple of years is ByteDance, the owner of TikTok, has jumped out, and we see here the only purple one here. And that's growing very rapidly. So we're getting, and these companies are absolutely enormous. I think most of you have heard of Alibaba and Tencent, but these are hundreds of billions of dollars worth. It's absolutely astounding how big these, and what they do, these companies, they work across many different platforms, everything from messaging to commerce to video platforms, and we'll touch on that in a moment. China, we all know that it's e-commerce is one of the main things fueling the boom in China. But how big it actually is, you can see here. These are quite recent numbers from December 2020, where we see total percentage of retail sales. Obviously, 2020 is a bit of an anomaly, but you look at 2021 and the growth 2022 expected to get up to 55% of all retail sales will be through e-commerce. And if you look at the actual growth here on the right-hand side, I mean, this is absolutely massive, $3.5 trillion dollars in this case. That's absolutely phenomenal. Living here, everybody knows that you do everything online. You shop online, you book your taxi online, you book food online. The rest of the world is catching up. I think many of the technologies that have been developed here in China are now actually starting to be adopted in other parts of the world as well. And then just briefly about what it actually is about the growth. If you see here, short video user growth, once again, a huge jump in the first half of last year. People bored, stuck at home, got this massive jump in from the first half of 2020. And also live streaming, once again, a huge jump last year when people were locked down, and what they're doing is sitting at home and buying things online, consuming videos, buying all the purchases from the comfort of their own home. So I'll touch now on social media channels. I think most of you know the channels. A typical content channel strategy would be a mix of Weibo, WeChat, it would have the Jihu, it would have Red these days, Douyin. That would be like a sort of standard mix these days. My life was a lot easier a few years ago, 2013, we only had Weibo, and then we had WeChat come along. Got a little bit more complex. Now we have this vast array of very, very powerful channels that we can use to build our brand, to get our message across, and obviously sales is a large part of that. And I think for us in this business, it's about making these choices. There's a kind of a fallacy that social media is about content only, and it doesn't cost a lot of money because it's just about content creation. Your information is going to go viral. I can guarantee you that that's not the case. You need pretty deep pockets, and considering how big China is, the size of the population, you should not underestimate the size of the budgets you need to make things happen. I think a lot of people think, okay, I'm on Tmall, I've got my Tmall global store, and I've got my TP, I'll set up a WeChat, and then we're good to go. Unfortunately, that's not the case. You need money to drive traffic, to build your audience. You need to create a lot of content across many different channels. You need to work with KOLs, you need to work with KOCs, you need to have paid advertising, and all of that costs a lot of money. And I think it's a bit of a learning process that a lot of people have to go through. The big Chinese brands and a lot of the car companies, they know you need to spend a lot of money in this space. And I think a lot of people coming into the market really underestimate. They think we've got 200,000 euros. That's a great, fabulous budget. I should be able to make quite a dent with that. I think you realize that quite quickly that budget will run out in many different ways. So just touching on some of the newer channels as advertised for this webinar. First of all, Xiaohongshu is a social commerce platform. It's really come up on the rails probably the last 3 years, and its strengths lie in the profile of its audience. It's mostly female. It's mostly tier 1 cities, so the big cities in China where there's a bit more money. And it started mostly with things like cosmetic reviews. What we're seeing now is that for quite a lot of our brands we work with, some super high-end brands like Aman Hotels, which is quite expensive. For us, we're getting great traction on Red for this. So it goes beyond just consumer goods. It's actually a great place for brand building. Press the button there. So Little Red Book is it's all about working with the network here. It's about identifying influencers. So one end you've got the KOLs, that could be like a fitness influencer, maybe you've got some health food that you want to bring into China. So you identify, and these KOLs come at different levels. You get your basic level ones, and they start at like 5,000 to 10,000 RMBs, and then you go up to maybe a couple of 100,000. Then if you want to go to celebrity level, then it gets much higher. But these influencers generally have a very clear profile. The way I see these influencers, you don't really see them as people as such. Of course, there are people behind it, but they are individual brands. And to take a media analogy, it's a bit like buying a title. Before, when you used to, if you're advertising for cars or advertising for football, whatever, you'd have your niche titles that you would use to get this information across. So if you treat KOLs as a media and look at their profile, you look at the way their tone of voice, look at the imagery, look at the type of videos, look at the quality, and that's how you identify which ones fit with your brand, because there's a lot of them out there. And then next to that, you have KOCs, which are key opinion consumers. They're a slightly different level as KOLs, but they're very, because there's a lot of them, you can actually stitch them together to create a whole network of KOCs that are very much, and because they are the target audience, they're wonderful conduits to get your message across in a very naturalistic way to your audience, because you're talking like peer-to-peer, friends-to-friends way of approaching it. And it's a very highly efficient way of getting your message across, and it's quite cost effective as well. So Xiaohongshu is a wonderful addition to the tools that we have for reaching out and brand building. And it should be used in conjunction with other media. It also has an e-commerce function where you can go straight away and you can actually purchase the products. It can be through live streaming, it could be through the KOLs, the reselling. There's lots of different ways to actually sell your products here. Secondly, Pinduoduo, and this is a really interesting one, because they now claim to have more transactions than Alibaba, which is kind of phenomenal considering Alibaba 85% of the whole transactions just a few years ago. But what they do is, it's a very interesting one, because the big brands themselves, or the really up amazed, the big brands themselves, they treat it a bit like a giant outlet store. So many of them don't really have their own flagship stores on here. It's mostly resellers. It could be authorized resellers, it could be traders, and there's about there's tens of millions of these resellers there. So here we see two different types of store. They look pretty identical here. One is a reseller, one is actually Adidas. And in many cases here, they sell their older products a bit like an outlet store. Pinduoduo has a huge following, especially in the lower tier cities, tier 3s, tier 4s, cities in more the rural areas of China. It has a massive following here. And how that reflects itself is the average sales per person is just over 2,000 RMBs. It's about $300 per person, which is about a third of the average sales, annual sales per person of Alibaba. So that has a higher frequency and higher overall ticket price. But here in Pinduoduo, it's a group buying, and you can just opt in and say, I would want to buy this product. We've got a couple of examples later of how that works. And you just say, I opt in, I want to buy this. There's a very clear time limits. It could be 2 hours. Say, I want to buy these cookies, or I want to buy this makeup, or I want to buy whatever I want to buy. And say, click on it, I want to buy these Adidas running shoes. Oh, great. And then in 2 hours, it goes through, click, and then you get products sent through to you. And it's highly attractive, because a lot of people in more of the sort of tier 3, tier 4 cities, they may not have the same retail opportunity, retail experiences in their cities that we have in places like Beijing and Shanghai. So it's very important to actually get out there and experiment. I think there's a great opportunity, and I think it's a great opportunity for new brands to experiment with Pinduoduo, because it's relatively cost effective still at this point in time. Another one, Dianping, which is a reviews site, highly powerful. So if you have a restaurant and you have bad reviews on Dianping, then you're in big trouble. Anytime you want to book a restaurant, you want to look for information, I book my bicycles through my rent-to-run app here. It's an all-in-one tool for finding information, for booking events, everything from except from your restaurants to right end to movie tickets. This is the place where you start. So it's a very powerful app. And by having 510 million active customers at the latest count is a very, very powerful tool. So if you have, it's not just for restaurants, but any type of products you have, make sure that you check how you've been spoken about on places like LinkedIn. Very, very important to understand your reviews and the feedback, instant feedback from your customers. And the third one, sorry, the fourth one here, just briefly touch on, it's quite short, which is giving TikTok and Douyin a run for its money. They've been around actually since 2011. They were actually the first short video platform, less well known initially, but Tencent invested a few $100 million back in 2017. And with might of Tencent behind them, they went public, I think, last year. And they have a market cap of, I think, when they launched, $160 billion US. It's dropped slightly since then, but it's another massive company you may never have heard of before, but very powerful when it comes to short videos and getting message across. And it works very well because the influencers, once again, China's influencers market, this is a great platform for working with influencers to get your brand out there. Okay, and why is that important? I'll touch on it in a moment. Because young consumers, what they do, even if they see it on your Tmall, or see it on JD, or see it on one of the other commerce platforms, what they go and do is check about the reviews, check about the quality, even if they've never heard of your brand before. The first thing they would do is go and check what is said about your brand. That's your Q&A. Very, very active platform, a lot of great information on here. You've got to make sure that your brand is well covered here. And that's a great opportunity to put the words out there that you want to control about how your brand's being talked about. Second, things like Bilibili is another video platform, more informative, a lot of training videos and things like that on here. Very important, once again, to check how your brand's been talked about. It could be a user experience, it could be your own videos. And then here, for example, Xiaoshu Red, as it's known, another great area for checking reviews. Here's an example of the tourism industry. It could be a venue, but it could be anything. It could be a product reviews. You've got to make sure that that's when you use your KOs and KOCs, make sure that they're saying the right things about your product. So there's a lot of research done before you actually part with their money. Let's see. There we go. Brands use Douyin, TikTok to showcase their wares. It could be anything from fashion, it could be fun, it could be lipsticks, it could be all sorts of products, it could be health products. It's very important that it doesn't have to cost a lot, but make sure this is spend enough money to get quality video. This could be your corporate brand videos that are sliced and diced. They need to be short, they need to be snappy, funky music under there. They need to bring your brand alive. So your old school PR video with talking heads doesn't really work here, okay? You need something that's a little bit more engaging. Other things that the consumers look for is brand partnerships. That is a simple example, for example, of MLA, which is the Meat and Livestock Association in Australia, with Pizza Hut. Kind of a random one here, but it's an interesting brand awareness exercise. It could be one of the things we've done an exercise lately about steaks. About people love beef here, but in many cases we don't really know how to cook a steak, for example, at home. So tutorial videos on there, and it could be anything from how to fix my bicycle to about healthy food. It could be anything here. And then, and of course, the UGC, user-generated content. And people love to create their own videos. And with the proliferation, once again, of smartphones, high-quality cameras in these phones, it doesn't take a lot to create your own content. Some of it can be very appealing, some of it less so, but it's out there. And if people are talking about your brand, the best thing is that you understand what they're saying and how they are saying it. So it's good to listen and find out what's being said. Product reviews can be found anywhere, so you really have, even if you think you're not in China yet, you probably are somehow, okay? It could be through the grey market, it could be through all different ways that your product is by chance, you're probably already here without you even knowing it. So in many cases, you really need to check all the different platforms, all the nooks and crannies to make sure that you find out what's being said about your brand and really understand the tone of voice. And is this the way you want to get your brand out there? Is this the positioning that you want to have? If not, then you're really going to have to come out and create more content that is on brand. So that's one of the challenges you have with brands. So on that note, it's about cutting through with content. Content in China, first of all, it needs to be locally relevant. And even it could be anything you use in some of the fashion brands, Paul Smith, McNeill, Gucci, Tiffany. All of this is, even though they have very clear global guidelines on their corporate identity, especially fashion brands, it still needs to be tailored for the channels we have in China, okay? A corporate video, 30 seconds, or a TVC is just not going to work. You really need a good creative team to actually adapt the content, still take the brand essence and the brand guidelines, but do it properly and do it in a format that's being consumed. And it needs to be adapted for each of the different channels because of the way the content is consumed. So to touch on some of the actual channels now, to drill down, for SEO purposes, search engine optimization purposes, or auto conversions. So start with WeChat is one of the places where you may want to start. It's, as we know, it's got a billion users. Pretty much everybody lives on WeChat here. But there's a lot of brands out there, so you're going to have to work very, very hard to build your community and make sure that your QR code can be found in all your packaging. Do not skip an opportunity, as Nikolai just did with his QR code, to get people to follow you through your QR code. WeChat is absolutely one of the cornerstones for doing that. Mini programs is a great example of Canada Beef, how they have a wonderful interactive WeChat mini program. And mini programs, for those of you who are not completely aware, think of it as a mixture between a website and an app, but built within the WeChat ecosystem. So as a consumer, you don't have to build down and use mini programs. Mini programs are hindered by only one thing, and that's your imagination. So it could be anything. It could be go straight to commerce. It could be data capture. It could be brand building. It could be videos. It could be all sorts of different areas. It's all about down to your creativity and partly obviously your budget for actually creating these things. You can't for $10,000, you're really not going to get very far with your mini program, especially if it has some heavy lifting to do in the commerce department. Here's another couple of examples of a mini program about user engagement, driving conversions through your mini program. It could be here on the right, it's like a virtual auto experience with one of our clients, Brooks Brothers. We created this video just to showcase what the store is like. Here's a little one for Calvin Klein, a very simple pop-up store about for your underwear, customizing your name on there, whatever else you want to put on there. Here from Barredo, very simple ways of actually converting to commerce, to sales. And Weibo has been getting a bit of a bad rap for the last couple of years. People think it's company relevant. That's really not the case. One of the great things about Weibo is the fact that it's an open platform compared to WeChat, which is a closed platform. What does that mean? That means that anybody, even if they don't follow you, they can still see your content. So it's relatively cheap with things like fancy phone ads to actually build a lot of reads about for your brand. It's very influential. It spreads very quickly. It's a great way of getting news across. There's no limits like WeChat service account. You can only post 4 times a month. And if a month happens to have 5 weeks, like you do, then you're stuck for 1 week. Yeah, you can put in some great content, great interactive content. But you can only post once a week, which can be a little bit limiting. So Weibo is a bit like Twitter in any case. You can post as often as you want. You can have great formats, you put in videos, you put links. And one of the great things about Weibo, unlike WeChat, Weibo connects straight to Tmall, whereas WeChat does not, because the Alibaba, Tencent duopoly. Here's another opportunity for it could be e-commerce. Like I said, it goes straight through to your Tmall. links to point of sale on Weibo, and here a Weibo to WeChat mini program conversion. So there's lots of opportunities here with Weibo. So really wouldn't. I see a lot of briefs these days saying, "Oh, I don't think you need a Weibo." Maybe you don't, but you should at least understand the reasons why you do not choose it. Okay, because it could be a very cost-effective way of building a brand, and it has a huge KOL network on there that was very, very effective. Here on Changshu Red, it's about educating, inspiring content. So very much talk to an audience. If you have a certain type of products, work very, very well on these platforms. Here's about styling tips. Here's a UGC topic and a live stream. And on the right-hand side, a UGC contest and engagement to try on products. Very, very interactive, very, very social. And I think this is where the word social commerce really comes into play, because this has got a great crossover between social content and making sales as well. So search is extremely important. So make sure that your naming for your brand is exactly the way you want it to be. Do your research beforehand to make sure that your Chinese name is a singular Chinese name. It's not confused with any other brands. Because when search is done, it could be through your copy, it could be through organic, created by UGCs. It could be your page through your seeding and KO and KOCs. But make sure it's consistent. Make sure it can be found, and make sure it's you that it is being found. Red, like we mentioned, wonderful opportunity to drive O2O through your content. Make sure you have the right activations, and make sure you have the opportunity to drive these sales. So it could be a physical store, it could be an online element, it could be through live streamers, it could be through KOLs, but it's a lot of opportunities. So think it through, not just creating content for content's sake. Make sure what is that content, what is the purpose of that content, and why would we put it up there, and what action do you want people to take after seeing that content. And here we come to call to action. Okay, call to action. The old-fashioned way, advertising, still works, costs a lot of money. Here, for example, it could be on WeChat month ads, start at 50,000 RMBs for a flash in the pan advertising, but that's the way the world rolls. We've got Weibo Fancy Tong, which is great because you can actually drip, 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 day by day, an X amount of money, a bit like Facebook in that regard, where you can actually have your ads, and then we find that one very, very effective. We also have things like on Red, you get keywords you can put in there, or here Red Stream ad for more target audience opportunities. Lots and lots of paid advertising opportunities outside of KOs and KOCs. So don't forget that as well. When you're trying to build a community, think about the advertising side as well, and make sure you budget for it in your plans, because it can be very expensive as an add-on if you haven't worked that out at the start of the year. Consideration here, as target users in consideration about what points they're actually thinking of making decisions. Here's a WeChat month ad to promote a brand mini program here on the left side, here, this one here. We could have Weibo Fancy Tong ads, and like I said, on Red as well. I'm going to got a special guest here. That's Klaus KP to his friends, who ran this live stream for a very famous Danish brand. So I want Klaus to give you a little bit more information on this one.
Thank you, Paul, and learned a lot actually. So I'm a practitioner. So I run Brand House. We have around 30 flagship stores on various platforms. We also have products in more than 1,000 convenience stores and so on. So we're in the market every day, as Paul mentioned, trying to get our brands into the Chinese consumers, get the awareness without spending a tremendous amount of money. But it is very expensive. So this is an example. So we run a lot of promotions for our brands with the big KOLs. So we work with all the big ones. This particular case, which is Danish, is with the Lijati, which is probably, I would say, number 2 today. So this is for Anton Berg, our lovely Danish chocolates with alcohol in them. So these are the big gift packages, which are something like 250 RMB equivalent. So this is the Rose World model of Anton Berg. So we started this live stream with him, Lijati. You cannot see it up there, but it says 8:58. and by 8:59, our whole stock was sold out. So in less than 1 minute, we sold about 1.2 million RMB in stock, something like 7,000 units, and payment received already. That was a little bit of returns, but not at all, not a lot. So maybe something like 10%, 15%. So this is just astonishing. We actually, Alibaba, this was run on Tmall supermarket. So this is Alibaba's own supermarket. So it was joint hosted with Alibaba. But if we had 3 times more stock in our warehouses, we could have sold that in that minute. So it's one of the examples where for our brand partner, which is Anton Berg, we have this on exclusivity. They've never seen anything like it. This is like a 150-year-old Danish company. And for them to hear that we can sell the whole stock and actually 3 times more in 1 minute, for them is crazy. We actually ran another event, another brand about a week ago with Beijing, number 1 KOL, and we did something similar, but in less than 5 seconds. So we sold, in this particular case, it's an orange juice, 5 containers, full-size containers, it's probably the same size as this room, times 2 or something like that. We sold that in 5 to 6 seconds. So again, this is very expensive. It's not something, I mean, if you want to do this every day, you need to have big pockets, but you also get a tremendous amount of awareness. So for this particular live stream that day for Austin, we had 12 million viewers. And during our particular live stream, I mean, it wasn't 1 minute, right? Probably a little bit more. We probably talked for a couple of minutes. We had 3 million people looking at this. 7,000 managed to buy. A lot of people were unhappy they didn't get to buy. But this is why we will invest in such a promotion. Right? One is you make the sale, you don't make a lot of money that day, but we hope that those 7,000 people, hopefully 3 million people, at least will understand what Anton Berg is, come back into our flagship stores on with his team, what it is, and make repeat purchases. So that's a real life example of how we can use live streaming and to promote.
Thanks, Katie. I mean, that's a wonderful real life example of how powerful live streaming is. How powerful, but once, as Katie said, you need to have very deep pockets. You could think of the bigger picture. It's not about the margins you make on the day. It's often the follow-up, the brand awareness that you have created by working with such a high-profile influencer. Here, another Danish example. We actually have the cookies here. We have them here. Danisa. On Pingo, how does it work? Very simple. You sign up for a pack of cookies with 10 random friends. You have maybe 1 hour, 2 hours, and it's just a group buy. Sells through. There's probably not a lot of margin made on this, but once again, it's great for building awareness. And hopefully, when you get repeat buys coming further once people out. So it's a great way of actually sampling as well, getting sampling out to people, get it in their homes, get them to taste it. So when they're on the supermarket or on online supermarket, they recognize the brand, click on it and buy, and that's where you get your old-fashioned margins again. So here, this is how it works. Beautiful type of photography, as you can see here. They look very tasty. Explanations up here about the different type of cookies and what the tastes are. And of course, things like a keywording here, like royal, gifts, snack, healthy, popular. These are all words that help sell the product and get people to buy in. Okay, here's an example that we did for a Paul Smith event here in Beijing before the lockdown. It's a very simple call to action. Once again, using KOL, using very funky, he made a video himself, and it was a great call to action, fit very much with the brand. And actually, this exhibition was a huge success, hopefully partly because of the way the marketing was approached. And just one last example, I think I'll go here, is a Spanish ham. Once again, a group buy, as you can see here. You can see what the price is. You can opt in. You say, okay, very clearly what it is you're buying. Nice videos to help do the sales. So before you have your videos on the TVCs, or you have pre-rolls on something like a Yoku. Those days are long past. Now the videos are right at the point of sales, which is where you want to be. So just 5 thoughts just to wrap up here. First of all, as we know, digital is channels digital first place in terms of marketing. That's where you start. You think about billboards, you think about TV, forget it, okay? It's digital first, and it's mobile phone first, okay? That's where you start your marketing, and you work your way backwards. Secondly, is even a China-tailored approach to build brand awareness. So you need to make sure your content, even if you have very clear global visual identity guidelines, if you have a very clear approach to doing things in other parts of the world, you can still take that visual identity and make sure you are consistent, but make sure it's adapted for the channels you're looking to use. And in some cases, if you need KOLs, then you may go a little bit off piece. You just give them very clear guidelines how a brand is used, but you've got to leave them a little bit of individuality to be able to get their brand essence across as well. Social commerce is a driving force for online sales. As we know, you can have a wonderful Tmall store, but if you're not on the right social channels where people check the content, check about your brand and what it stands for, then you're not going to get very far. Make sure you cut through and locally relevant creative execution is essential. So make sure that it really fits with the Chinese audience. There's a lot of faux pas happen across the years. Just make sure that you work with the right partners on the ground here that know what they're doing. And lastly, budgeting for media is key to build a community to call to action. It's not cheap. You can't just post some content online and have a store and expect just to have a huge amount of sales. The competition is fierce. So you really need, and I think the example that KB just gave there, you really need deep pockets to actually fight in this market, to get your market share. It doesn't matter how popular in other parts of the world. It may help with some of the content, but you really need to get down and dirty and in the trenches, and you need some pretty deep pockets to make that happen. So just wrapping up here. Questions?
Good. First of all, thank you very much, Paul. This microphone is also attached, so I think the people online can still hear me even if I don't have the physical microphone. But first of all, thank you so much, Paul, for running through this slide introduction, but also a slide post introduction to some of the more deeper apps besides just the WeChat, besides just some of the other Alipay that people may know. We will now go into our Q&A session of today's event, and we've already received a couple of questions in the Q&A functions on Zoom. So I'll start and run through some of those with you first, Paul. Should any of you watching be having any other questions, then please continue to share them with us in the Q&A function on Zoom. And then also for you people here in the room today, we'll also go through some of your questions should you have some. I can see we already received some more, but the first question, Paul, is a very technical one, and I think I can actually help you out with that one, because the first question is, will the PPT be shared? And I think I can run right into that one and say, for all the EU SME Center events that we're having, the PPTs will be shared with the ones who have registered for today. And also, we will be putting up bits and pieces of today's presentation on our YouTube platform as well. We may cut out some of the technical issues, but the rest of it will be put up on our YouTube platform as well. So the next question will be for you then, Paul, and that is, can we download these apps outside China?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think in some cases you cannot. Douyin, for example, the international version is TikTok. So I presume you cannot. I think you need to have a Chinese mobile phone number in many cases to be able to get onto the Chinese app stores. So I don't know which ones are available. Red should be, because that's a lot of cross-border sales. I think Douyin not. The other thing, I doubt that will be available either overseas as well, because all that local reviews and stuff like that. So. But very good question. I don't really know, because we're so much in our own bubble. I think for the most part, if you can get it, it will be a watered down version of what's available here in China. A lot of functionality will be lost. I think the international versions compared to the local versions that they have.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the example of TikTok, which is having of course the non-Chinese TikTok version, also the Chinese inside China, the Douyin version that is actually having some differences.
Yes,
so,
correct.
So a good question with that one. In regards to these questions, I'll also just like to remind that we still have the Ask the Expert function, which means that any questions that you may forget to ask today, or any other questions you're always encouraged to ask them on our EU SME Center website under the Ask the Expert function as well. Then we'll try and do some additional research, some questions, should you wish for that. Now, the next question, Paul, is in regards to this COVID/COVID world, because I think a lot of the ones watching back home from Europe are still experiencing some different various degrees of lockdowns, whereas here where we are in Beijing right now, we are experiencing the opposite. In fact, as we're sitting here face to face having this event today. So the question So the question is, what are some popular trends on the media right now in the post-COVID times of China?
Well, like I said, I think the 2 points I made, short videos, the jump in short videos, that has really taken an even bigger step. And next to that is live streaming, the example that KB gave about live streaming. These are the two big trends, I'd say, from this year. Shopping is not really a trend online because people have been doing that for a long time, but that's just been proliferated. I would say there's more opportunities now for buying online than there was before. And if anything, if you have to put it in one word, it's probably social commerce is the area. So whereas before you have very clear distinction between social media and e-commerce, that is very much that separation has disintegrated, I would say. So that's probably the biggest evolution.
Okay, thank you for that, Paul. Then we will go right on to the next question that I received prior to this Q&A session. Then we will go on to see if there's anyone in the room that has some questions, and then we will continue with some of the additional questions that we have received while this Q&A session has been ongoing. So the next question is, once again, a bit technical. It asks, can we have some references on the cost of hiring different KOLs or KOCs?
Okay.
And the question continues, basic prices, medium prices, famous people, very famous people.
Okay. Yes, I mean, once again, here's how long is a piece of string. It would start, I would say the KOCs like 1,000 RMBs, roughly 1,000 to 2,000 on the platform like Red. You can have medium so basic KOLs, maybe for 10,000. Maybe even starting at 5,000 up to about 30,000. You get those basics. So what you have here, and then you start to get a little bit more famous, and they're probably more famous as vertical KOLs, either known for shopping, or they're known for fitness, or they're known for makeup, or so then it starts to, then we've got, it all comes down to how many followers they have and how interactive they have, and then also looking at which brands they worked with before. So then you start to get to the level of 50 to 150,000 RMBs a time. And then you can ask them to do quite a lot. They'll have a professional team behind them, they'll have professional videos, they'll be writing articles, and they have multiple posts related to your content. And then of course you get into the next level, and that starts probably 300,000-400,000 up to, it could be in the millions when you're talking about celebrities. And at that point in time, you're talking about a whole different kettle of fish. Yeah?
Just to give you an example, so the guy we used there, Li Jiaqi, he bought a house 1 year ago in Shanghai for 200 million RMB in cash.
Okay,
200 million RMB in cash.
And he's probably late 20s or late 20s.
So just give it, I mean, these people are superstars, and if you can sell Anton Berg chocolates in seconds, and you get 12 million people online, I mean, it's just, they are complete. And the thing is, what you shouldn't forget is these people, especially at that level, this is not one guy working from his bedroom. This is a team of 50, sometimes 100 people that are out there sourcing, doing the contracts, sourcing the different brands, doing all the negotiations, working, because they like to choose the brands they work with because it helps their profile as well. So they don't want to crash and burn within 6 months and be irrelevant again. So they have to manage their own profile as well. So at that point in time, it's a big operation dealing with a big media operation, not a single person.
Yeah. So it's hard to give a specific number because, as you said,
I think we gave a few numbers there, but I would say you probably, if you have like a small campaign, you probably need about 50 to 100,000 RMBs worth of support through KOLs. If you're doing something bigger and you're a bigger brand, then you're probably looking at close to 500,000. Because you generally you wouldn't just use one KOL, you'd maybe use 6 to 10 KOLs. It's like a media buy where you have multiple fronts, maybe slightly different angles, talk to slightly different audiences.
Yeah. Okay. So I think if you're a small, medium-sized enterprise, you probably tread the waters a little bit carefully in the beginning. But
well, that's the other thing you do. The great thing is when you work with cheaper KOLs, of course, it's still money out of pocket, but you can test them. You can have a look at how it works and just test the waters, test your messaging, test how the brand is received. And that point in time, if you start to see traction through sales, you can actually spend a little bit more money. But I would always go for probably at least a handful of KOLs at the same time, so you can actually compare them, because you can have the same type of content, the same type of product, but can vastly different outcomes depending on the influencer you use.
Okay, thank you for that, Paul, and also for you, KP, as well. We will go on to the next question here, which reads: any advices for companies not selling material products but selling services? Are there specific platforms for that in China?
Not really, because most platforms in China are concentrated. So you don't have a lot of, give you an example, fashion, for example, whereas in Europe, you may have Mr. Porter, and you have Yux, and you have Farfetch, and you have all these different guilds, and you have all these different, in China, you don't really have that yet. That may be the next evolution, but the big ones are so powerful and so strong that it's a bit like a black hole, they suck everything in around them. So there's not really much space for vertical channels that you have in other markets that evolve at a slower pace. I would say that's probably the case. Not most people can tell me otherwise. But I think what we have seen is maybe there's probably about 10 series big platforms that cover pretty much everything from travel to. But if you're looking at services, travel is a service, for example. Destination marketing, extremely important. If you have a hotel, for example, you're not selling a physical product, but you're selling a destination or an experience, then that is social media is wonderful for that, because it's about talking about it and also when you start to travel again. If you're selling things like financial services, that is more difficult because it's curtailed. For example, there's a lot of restrictions to different categories. So it really depends on the service you're selling. I think we've been approached by a couple of companies that try to sell visa services, for example, and even that's very difficult. So it's anything that may possibly suck money out of China, you're going to find difficulties actually promoting that. And that's also including things like real estate. For example, it's quite difficult to sell real estate through social media channels as well, or these channels, because of the governmental restrictions on that.
Thanks for those.
But if there's a more specific question about what type of service it is, maybe I can give a more specific answer on that. So that person can tell me a category, then I can maybe give a more detailed answer for the specific category.
So you heard that if you want a more specific category for that, you're most welcome to answer or ask another question for that one. In the meantime, Paul, we will move on to the next one, which is going back to the KOLs. I think the KOLs.
Very popular one, yes.
I was going to say it's quite an interesting one because we keep hearing so much about them in China. And the question reads: how can I find lists of relevant KOLs/KOCs in my sector? Any tips for selecting the most appropriate ones?
Yes, okay, there's two different questions there. There is no such thing as a list. There are a couple of agencies that say they have databases, but at least the trouble with these is often they're outdated so quickly because there's so many of them. So first of all, there's rankings. If you look at, if you go to some of the sites themselves, you see the rankings of who influences there. But the key thing is to identify your category first of all, and then go in and find the players. And then you may have a long list of 30 or 40 people. Okay, and then you go in and have a look at the type of brands they worked with before. You look at the quality of the videos they're creating, the quality of the content they're creating. Look at not just the amount of followers they claim to have, because that can be built up fake, but you look at the actual real interactions. So if somebody says I have 350,000 followers, but you see them only get 3 reactions for every video they put out there, then you know those numbers may be suspect. So you've got to look at all these different aspects. It's about the quality of the content they create, the brands they use, but look at the interactions, the type of questions they get, the type of comments they get, And I believe if you have the opportunity, have a look at the amount of sales they've actually generated as well, because some of the platforms you can see the amount of sales they've generated.
Thank you for that one. And then the next one is kind of an extension of that, and also going a little bit back to what we were talking about before with the pricing of such services. The question reads, do you think that European SMEs in general would have the capacity to invest in this type of promotion, or do you think it's also worth?
Absolutely. I think for every budget, there's basically an influencer. So it really depends what the value is of that influencer. So for every budget, there is an opportunity. The bottom line is, if you go to marketing, you can't not do it. So it's not really a question if it makes sense to do it, you have to do it, because it's the only way you're going to help build your brand and build your brand awareness and create content online that can be found by other consumers. So it's like saying I'm doing an advertising campaign, but I'm not buying media. It doesn't really work, okay? So from that perspective, you really need to use them. And like I said, don't treat them as people, treat them as a media. And how would you analyze a medium? You look at, like I said, once again, you look at the profile, you look at the type of other advertisers they work with, because these guys, like I said before, they are also conscious of their own brands, their own branding, because that is their business. So they, in many cases, they charge a different price for different brands, because one brand they really want to work with, so they give a cheaper price because it helps their profile. Another brand they're less interested in will charge a lot more because they can. So there's no rate cards as such for these as well. So that's why it makes it is kind of difficult. So in many cases, that's why working with specialist agencies really helps, because in many cases they'll have a long history of working and they've got a good idea of what the ballpark price should be for that type of KOL.
Thank you for that, those reflections, Paul. Then I think we will take a little time to see if there's anyone here in the audience who would like to ask a question. We do have more online as well, but I'd just like to see if there's anyone here who has a question. We have one over here. Perhaps we can put the microphone a little bit closer.
All right. Yeah, thanks a lot for a very, very interesting presentation. A lot on the consumer side. And yes, I would like to ask, how do you view the B2B side? What for things that are for professional use or industrial goods?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a very logical question. Use platforms. Absolutely, and that's the thing that people don't realize, that B2C, B2B, generally the same platforms. Because what you get is your B2B clients are on WeChat, they are on the video channels, they are on B2B. So you use the same channels, but then and also influencers. You need to use influencers in a certain specific market. So if you're selling tools, or you're selling paint for the industry, you sell different machinery, then there will be influencers in that category. I guess you may have to dig and find them. But the key thing is about finding a partner, and maybe yourself, that creates technical content. Because in many cases, that's where the challenge lies, creating content which is relevant for the industry. So having somebody that really understands, because there's a lot of niche industries out there, and there's a lot of technical words that need to be used. And I think that's probably where the biggest challenge is. But you would use the exact same platforms to get the message across.
Thank you for that. And then, if there's, is there any other questions that we have here in the room for now? Else, be sure to raise your hand later so I can see it, and then we will come back to you after we take another one from online. So the next one, Paul, is reads like this: we are building a brand containing products that is most suitable for brick and mortar shops. What type of marketing would you recommend for brand awareness? Products are lifestyle and within the home decor sector.
Okay, so the big, more bulky, be it sofas, be it tables, be it lampshades. So if that's the case, still online, because video is very important for these things. You have things like you may set up a physical showroom, like and that could be in any country in the world. You set up a showroom that does testing. Obviously, you need to have the person that's speaking Chinese that actually talks about it, talks about the quality of the made. So you create a series of videos for each of the individual products. You put them in a certain type of home setting to see how they would look. Yeah? And you've got to think about the size of Chinese apartments and houses. So it's one thing to have a big country table where 8 people sit around it's quite another thing to actually sell that to the right people. So you've got to look at what products you're selling. It's a bit like if you could go to the local IKEA here, and the products we have here are tailored for the China market. I'm not saying it's IKEA because they do a pretty good job already, but it's I would say it's about creating virtual showrooms and having video content to actually help market that as well. Because if people can't physically see it, because China being such a vast place, even if you have 10 physical stores, you're still going to miss out on a couple of hundred cities with a million people each. So not everybody can actually visit these actual physical stores, but they may well be interested in buying it if you see certain influencers sitting there. But I would say I would create a series of videos in sort of virtual, natural setting for this type of company.
I think with those reflections as well, then we will go on with another question from online. Now, this question is a little bit related to the one we received here in the room just before. The question reads, what platforms are suggested to use for B2B sales?
Okay, that's it really depends on the what it is. B2B sales, so that could be anything, of course. So if you're selling engine parts, then it may be a little bit more difficult, or if you're selling tractors to. But I would say the key thing here, especially if you have a limited amount of clients, would be building up using social media platforms as a CRM gathering tool. So you have people opt in, you gather the data, you gather the WeChat account or the telephone number, you can find out which city they are, and basically capture that data. I think when it comes to B2B, nothing beats one-to-one sales. But once again, it would also depend on the type of product that we'll be having a type of virtual showcase. It could be videos on B2B, for example. It could be other type of showcasing. I would say probably the best thing is data capture through social CRM for lead generation, and then possibly through live videos and live streaming, even to a very specific audience, very specific category relevant influencers.
Thank you for that. Then we will move on to, we still have a few more questions here and also a little bit of time left. So we will continue here with another one from Zoom. The question reads, what about the use of KOCs?
Yes.
Any advantages/disadvantages compared to KOLs?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the advantage is obviously they're cheaper, so you can experiment more. You can have a lot more of them. You can see as a network effect. The big advantage is if you've got 50 KOCs, 1,000 clients is 50,000 clients versus 1 or 2 expensive KOLs. They create a lot of footprint, they create a lot of content, they create a lot of content that can be searched and found, especially if you give the right tags in the first place. So that is, you create a lot of content, okay? What's the downside of that? The content may not be the standard you're used to having, because you've got to let these young guys and girls, who often are, do their own way, with their own style, their own way of talking to their friends. That could be the downside. That may not be the quality you're quite looking for your brands. But if you treat it more like UGC content, which it actually is, then you can maybe find 1 or 2 of these KOCs that you can nurture and actually nurture them as bringing to a sort of KOL level. Maybe it'd be great for product testing. Many cases, KOCs, you just send them photos and pictures and videos, whereas KOLs should be sending physical products. So from that perspective as well, you can sort of save your costs. But you can find 1 or 2 that are really effective and work very well, a bit like the old Avon ladies, where you actually have this network effect. I think they both have their merits. So to summarize, they're cost effective. You can actually create a lot of great content across different platforms, but the content may not be at the standard that you want for your brand. So you lose a little bit of control on the other hand.
Thank you for that. Then we have just about 5 minutes left of the Q&A session. So if anyone else still has 1 or 2 burning questions, then please ask them down in the Q&A session, and we'll try and go through them. Now, The next question we have here is it's a bit of a long one, so hang on here. It reads: in the past, it was normal to advise European SMEs to find a local partner, be it importer or distributor. Does this digital world change this perspective? Would you keep advising companies to find importers that would do this digital marketing campaigns locally? Or do you think European SMEs could try to approach the market more directly?
Well, there are more opportunities to do it more directly, be it through Tmall Global, be it through cross-border, through Reds. But the question is, if you have somebody Chinese in your team who's sitting in Denmark, who's sitting in Madrid, then that helps, because obviously from a language perspective, you're going to have to create content that resonates with the local audience. If you don't have these language skills, then obviously it's going to be more difficult to do it. Technically, it's possible. I would say it's probably not worth the effort, because you've got still got to pay people to do it. They may not have the experience doing it. Mistakes can be very, very costly. Of course, working with a partner does not negate the fact that mistakes will be made and can be made. But I think working with reputable partners with strong track records is probably your best bet, especially if funds are limited. You don't really have the bandwidth to screw up short term. So if you have any budget at all, I would probably look for the right partners, be it on importing, be it just know the rules and regulations, be it through warehousing. But I think KP is probably a better position to give an answer to that one.
Yeah, I think it's exactly as you said. I mean, it's commerce, right? I mean, e-commerce is nothing different from commerce. It's just commerce in a channel format. If you don't have a local team, it's got to be very, very hard.
Okay, well then I think we will once again just turn to the room here and ask last time if there is anyone here who has a question. And now is now the time. I'm sure for the ones who are here, Paul will probably also be happy to answer a question after the stream ends. But if anyone has a question while we are online as well. Else, if not, then I think I'll just once again say a big thank you to Paul McNeill, a managing partner at Resonance here in China, for sharing his experience both on the what's happening right now, but also the experience that you have accumulated over your many years of working in this sector, observing the different trends in the different industries in the China market. So the last part here is just going to be once again to recap of some of the services of the EU SME Center. Before I do that though, I just want to once again highlight what we have up here on the slides. For those of you watching online, it would be very much appreciated if you could take 1 minute to scan with your phone this QR code that we have here to answer the feedback survey, so we can see how we can improve our events, be it this one or be it other events in the future, which topics you would like to hear about, all that kind of feedback we would be very happy to hear about. And also I just want to once again say that we have just recently launched our self-assessment tool, which is available as well on the EUSME website. You can try and take it and see how far along in the process this tool would deem your company or organization to be in the process of maturing to enter the China market. And the last advertisement for the EU SME Center website is about the Ask the Expert tool as well, which is on our website, where if you do have other questions that you may not have asked today, it could be about this topic, it could be about any other topic, then please don't hesitate to go into the Ask the Expert tool, and then you can ask your question completely free of charge, and we're very much encouraging you to do so. Then here at the end, I just want to round up by saying, on behalf of the EU SME Center in China and the Danish Chamber of Commerce as well, thank you all very much for tuning into today's session on understanding Chinese social media with Paul McNeill of Resonance here in China. And stay tuned for our future events as well by keeping updated to our WeChat profile, our LinkedIn profile, and our website, and all the other platforms also related to the EU SME Center and the Danish Chamber of Commerce as well. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.